Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Crawl, Walk, Run, Scaling Candidate Engagement for Every Organization. My name is Claire Alloway. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Jobvite. I'm going to kick things off on behalf of the Jobvite and Bamboo HR teams. Before we get started, I wanted to give a couple of housekeeping tips, shenanigans. The words are escaping me right now. That's embarrassing. Okay, so first off, all your lines are muted, and that's just to avoid background noise. But we would love your questions for the Q&A section at the very end of the webinar. You can type those in throughout the webinar in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. That's also where you can let me know if you're having any audio issues or any problems at all. I'll be on hand to help you out with those. The last thing I have to say is that yes, you will be getting these slides, and yes, you will be getting the recording of the webinar. I'll be sending that out to all of you guys by tomorrow morning. Hopefully, regardless of where you are in the world, that should be in your inbox when you come into the office tomorrow. And with that, I am going to pass it on to our presenters. Here they are. So we've got Chad on our left. He is the Recruiter and Recruitment Marketing Manager at Jobvite, and JD, who is the Head of Talent Acquisition at Bamboo HR. I think, Chad, why don't you give us a little more background on who you are and a little more about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire. Hello, everyone. As Claire mentioned, I am Chad Raudebush. I am the Recruiter and Recruitment Marketing Manager here at Jobvite. A little bit of background, I've been in recruiting and recruitment marketing in some capacity for the last 10 years now, as much as it might pain me to admit that it's true, and really found a recruiting for cloud-based technology firms over the last several years and love it. Been with Jobvite now for 9 months and was a customer of Jobvite's for 4 years prior to, so love the tools, love the technology, love networking and connecting, and yeah, excited to talk with everyone today. JD?
Hey, I am excited to be here as well and be here with Chad. We've had a few great discussions just prepping for this webinar and really excited to present this to everyone with him. A little bit about my experience. I have a little bit over a decade of experience in talent acquisition, acting as both a third-party recruiter for boutique technical recruiting firms and as an in-house technical recruiter. I've worked managing talent acquisition teams in high-growth SaaS companies like Bamboo HR, and also servicing Fortune 500 clients for the world's largest recruiting corporation in the past. And my main motivator is a focus on organizational health and development and recruitment marketing and employer branding. I'm trying to use my expertise to really change the very way that companies structure and view the functions of talent acquisition. And I really, really believe in empowering executives and HR leaders to focus on the human nature of human capital, something that sometimes just gets lost in the day-to-day of what we do, and in teaching through experience how a people-first approach can actually dramatically impact their bottom line. This is something I saw an article a little while ago, probably a couple years back, that really resonated with me, and it says, turns out doing the right thing affects your bottom line. And that's an overall focus that I have, and one of the reasons why I'm really grateful to be a part of this webinar. I'm grateful for all the attendance here. The fact that you have taken the time to, out of your busy schedules, take an extra hour to try to learn more about what you do, it tells a lot about you. And it's very indicative of the kind of professionals you are. So thanks for being here with us today. I'm grateful to be here with Chad. And let me just jump in to where we're at in the market right now. I think it's no surprise to anyone here that the competition for talent is extremely high. With unemployment rates as low as they are, it's a 70-year low. And with the numbers, according to the numbers for millennials, which are people born after 1980, they're changing jobs 4 times during their first decade out of college. So with that, we all know, and I think everybody's feeling it here on the line with us, there's quite a lot of pain for recruiters and making sure we're bringing people in and bringing them fast and high-quality candidates. And that's why I'm excited to talk about candidate engagement and why that matters, because it matters in such rough markets. And so that's what I want to let Chad then jump into now is talking about candidate engagement being a differentiator.
Thanks, JD. Yeah, you know, as we think about crawl, walk, run, and really scaling a great candidate experience, candidate engagement, doesn't matter the size of organization you are, you just can't afford a poor candidate engagement. In fact, 83% of job seekers say that a negative interview experience can change their mind about a role or a company that they once liked. And 87% of job seekers say a positive experience can change their mind about a role or a company that they once doubted. These are eye-opening statistics that really tell me a story that it is about the candidate experience and what are you doing to separate yourselves from your competition. So those are some numbers to think about as we kind of jump through and go through our talk track today. So I want to talk a little bit about the agenda really quickly. So what are we going to be doing now, and what can you do to get yourself to the next level? So JD and I are going to take a few minutes apiece going through separate individual topics here: employer branding, recruitment marketing, applications and sourcing, screening and interviewing, and then finally offer letter and pre-onboarding. So we'll bounce back and forth, JD and I, just kind of taking different slides and various points, and we'll jump right in. I'm going to throw it back to JD.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. One of the things that we're going to address, as Chad just mentioned, is this aspect of employer branding. And this is something I'm glad we're jumping into right off the bat, because if you're a smaller company, sometimes you watch these webinars and go, there's no earthly way that I can do that I can do all of that. How do I do that with such limited resources? And this is why I'm excited that Chad and I are talking about this today. There are little things that you can do now, no matter what level that you're at. If you are a smaller company, 50 employees or 100 employees or something like that, if you're a little bit higher in your scalability, around 300 or 500 or beyond that, we're going to talk about these specific levels and the little things that you can do on each topic that have a great impact now. So, number one, if you haven't really started jumping into employer branding or really don't have quite a lot of an apparatus set up, there are little things that you can do. And for you level 1 people out there, just use what you have. Now, what do I mean when I say that? One of the things that I think is commonly dropped is maintaining consistent contact with candidates. Sometimes people consider this an impossibility or not really viable when you have so many candidates and hiring managers that you need to talk with, so many different levels of communication that you need to have. This is why, for instance, one of the practices we have at Bamboo HR is sometimes we'll shut down our postings a little bit earlier than other places just so that we can maintain contact with great candidates that have already applied and making sure that we have good contact touch points. We just have a plan. So that's one of the first things I would say is just maintain consistent contact and have a plan, because your talent brand, which affects and is a subset of your employer brand, your talent brand is what people say about you. And what you want to do is provide an excellent candidate experience with the people you already have contact with. The second thing I'd recommend is making sure you're creating and refining a careers page. If you don't, sometimes I hear that people don't have a careers page, and I go, I just want to cry inside. And I go, you need to have something as quickly as possible. Go to your executives and do everything you can to get something even very basic up, something that can tell a little bit more about your company. A very simple to make website. There are a lot of different options that you can go for, even if you're a smaller company. The other thing that you can do is make sure that you're utilizing your current social channels for clear and consistent branding or messaging. You already have free social channels everywhere, right? Your company, make sure they have a LinkedIn page and a Glassdoor page and other pages that they can use, and make sure that they are really using a good messaging platform. And doing things for free, letting your employees, make sure your employees are using and utilizing the networks they already have. So this is just a quick example of what we did here over at Bamboo HR. On the left, you'll see this image, making sure you're providing a snapshot of what it's like to work at your organization. You should be using employee testimonials, stories, experiences, and the more you do this, the more you encourage candidates to picture themselves working for you. I think we do a pretty good job at this at Bamboo HR on our social media channel, so I hope you check them out. And one example, we consistently share our employees' photos from their paid vacations. It's something very specific that we do about us. And I think potential candidates see that and they take notice. They might think, hey, it would be nice to have that benefit, or where would I want to go on my paid vacation if I had one? Just so you know, this is just something that we do that the executives want to incentivize everyone at the company to take all of their PTO. So they do a reimbursement for our vacations. So that's kind of an inside look of what it's like working at our organization, and there are little things that you can do that can attract a lot of attention, just some of the day-to-day things. And social posts with real people typically actually perform better than product or business-related content. So that's a big piece there. And I'll let Chad jump in and take it from here on level 2.
Thanks, JD. Great points there. So let's move on to kind of the walk phase, level 2, and really getting to know your audience. I think this is really important as you do start to scale and you get past that crawl phase of really starting to build some content and some messaging. So know your audience. What I recommend and what we have seen work before is personalize the content for the specific audience group and expand that content and that messaging beyond the general employee value proposition, right? So really start to really find that niche audience that you're going after and personalize your messaging and your content so that it is relevant to that audience. Ways that you can do this: spend time with the teams for the roles in which you're really targeting that audience group. Sit down with that department. If you're virtual, you can always set up a meeting that's virtual. You don't have to always be on site, but getting to know that team, getting to know the leaders of that team, the individual contributors, is going to allow you to kind of figure out where do they hang out. Do they use a lot of social media? Do they frequently visit chat rooms? Where are some great outlets to kind of think outside the box for where you could find some really great talent that you might not be tapping into right now? Ask them how they found out about the opportunity at your company. Did they go to a career site? Did they just reach out to their trusted network? Did they use a job board? So collecting this data will allow you to then create that content that is specific to that audience. Getting to know what excites that team about the role. Finding out what is really fun, what do they like, but also finding out maybe what they don't like, right? So getting this information from the teams that are doing the responsibilities for the target audience that you are specifically going after is going to allow you to create some content that's very specific to them, and they're going to initially be drawn to that because they're going to feel like you get it. A benchmark report that we at Jobvite actually conducted this year found that more than a third of hires come from your career site and another third come from your job boards. So it's just very eye-opening to me to make sure that what you are featuring on your career site, on your company website, what you're putting out through your channels, through your job boards, making sure that content is consistent. You want to make sure that you're featuring the same brand throughout. And the more that a target audience, that job seekers see this consistency, it's just going to draw them to what you have to offer as a company, which is pretty exciting. So with that, let's take it to the next level.
Awesome. So once you've been building these great things that Chad has talked about, this really has to do with this focus, and I'm glad he addressed this. This focus on getting to know your teams. I would recommend starting with one team and really spending the time there. That's always been the difficult item we need to convince ourselves to do or to change, is to take the time for something that maybe doesn't have an immediate yield, or maybe doesn't feel like it has an immediate yield. We're constantly putting out fires. We have so many different levels of communications we have to handle that it's sometimes hard to invest that extra time up front. So I'm glad he talked about knowing your audiences and understanding your candidate personas and types that you're marketing to, essentially. From there, you can build by creating better relationships and forging good relationships across the board. once you start getting to know some teams, you're creating more and more brand advocates. Why? Too often recruiting is this nebulous thing to other people at your company. They don't really understand everything, all the mechanics that go into what you do day to day. So the more you get to know them, the more they'll get to know you. The more they see you seeking to understand the nitty-gritty, the details behind what they do, the frustrations as well as the positives of any particular job, they're going to understand that you know the role really well, and that they also understand with that personal relationship, you're going to take care of their referrals and so on and so forth. So you're just building from there. That's this third level is ensure that you and your recruiting team, at this point, there's probably several of you on a recruiting team, and you should be building brand advocates with your relationships. So focus on the internal and educating your employees so that way they become advocates for your company and jobs and working with them. A study from the Talent Board showed that candidates share their positive recruiting experiences with their friends, family, and colleagues. Example like about 81% of the time. So likewise, they share their negative experiences 66% of the time. And with social media, their experience becomes even more visible. And candidates share their positive experiences all over online, like Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Facebook, 51% of the time, and negative experiences 34% of the time. So this is something that you need to ensure that you have a good brand advocate presence, meaning your talent brand, the people inside your company and the people that you're in contact with on a regular basis are also talking about what it's like to work for that team. So start splitting up. Well, the real recommendation that I have as you're scaling a recruiting team here in this level is that you start splitting up your responsibilities and scaling other pieces of your brand. Make someone on your team in charge of brand efforts. What's the plan? What's the strategy? What are the little things you're going to do now, and how are you going to build that next quarter and next quarter? Too often, again, we get too sidetracked by the tactical, the minutia, and we're not really focusing on these big plans that are going to be able to get a broader audience and broader message. So I think actually Chad had a really good example of that he's going to share right now.
Yep. Thanks, JD. So when we started putting the content together for this webinar, and we were talking about this, creating relationships and making a unique experience, I was reminded of a customer I used to work with, and it was an engineering firm, and they put together a very unique job application to where you literally had to build things on their application on the website as you navigated through questions, and depending on how you answered those questions allowed you additional pieces to be able to engineer a product. And it was a really cool, very interactive way to get engagement, create uniqueness. And so as I was talking to Claire about this, she found this amazing campaign that Heineken put together. It goes well beyond the standard employee value proposition, and really it connects with the audience, which is job seekers. And I actually went through this and encourage you after the webinar to check it out. What it does is it really is so interactive. It was amazing. It's like watching a video that is directed towards you, the job seeker, as the audience, and asks you questions. And while you may or may not realize that the questions that they're asking is really trying to decipher what sort of a career path that you have, and where, based on those answers, where would you fit within Heineken as an employee? And it was really cool, and especially the first question that they ask is, do you want to be world famous, or do you want to have strong roots? And while that question is, I think we all want both, there is no wrong answer. And so, part of Heineken and what they're trying to create is they want to create a world famous brand. They want to create strong roots, and they want to find people who want to be a part of that. So definitely highly encourage you to go through this. It's just a really cool interactive. This is absolutely in the run phase of where you can scale, but definitely something that we wanted to kind of bring to your attention as maybe a goal to have to eventually build out the way that you're creating that engagement, creating relationships with candidates and job seekers, and kind of thinking outside the box to make it a little fun, and also to understand personalities and potential career paths for each of your job seekers.
Awesome. And as we jump from this idea of employer brand and things you can do to build your brand over time versus recruitment marketing, I think it's helpful to take a moment to talk about some nomenclature maybe or about some definitions in that recruitment marketing is a lot more focused. I think to talent acquisition professionals, sometimes the definitions are a bit hazy, and there are new definitions constantly. I'm sorry that we're all dealing with this, but at least we're in it together, right? So with recruitment marketing, this is specific for the paid advertising that you're doing, maybe display advertising or paid social, very specific to the advertising you do to also add and build your brand. So it's a smaller piece of that, but a very focused piece that I wanted to jump into. So level one, what can you do when you just don't have that many resources at your disposal and you're just trying to dive into this right now? The first thing that I recommend is stop and don't chase everything all at once. Be choosy in functions you pursue. There are too many companies or too many, I think, recruiting teams, or sometimes you're the only recruiter and you're trying to do everything all at once. Understandable to try to build something as fast as you can. Understandable to not have enough time to do it. But there's a really cool focus that we had in our company a couple years ago. It was our annual focus was choose, focus, finish, and repeat. A lot of times the hardest thing is just choosing sometimes less expensive things that you can do A/B testing on and trying things out. So target, number one, I'd recommend target for your highest needed positions. Who is your target audience? As we talked about this, Chad went into this as well. Who's your target audience? What are the candidate personas you're looking for? Where will they find the ad? Sometimes we just want to machine gun the world and blast our advertisements everywhere, when really we should be choosing very specific places where we want to test and see if we have good responses from candidates there. So think again about what would entice them to apply. What would your target candidate want? Why would they want to apply for the job? What is your company culture spectacular? Is there room for growth? Highlight the appealing things about that position and that team. Finally, ask, will this ad in general appeal to the ideal candidate? I think sometimes there's a disconnect between what hiring managers think and what recruiters think as far as that ideal candidate. So there should be a lot of clarity before you do some type of advertising or anything like that, no matter what scope or scale. Choose the channels that will be most effective for those priority positions. And new channels are constantly growing. That's the exciting thing about what's happening in talent acquisition. There are new channels constantly. And according to our partner Jobvite's 2017 job seeker study, almost a quarter of job seekers applied to their current or most recent job via LinkedIn. So maybe you want to check that out. LinkedIn has a very cheap PPC model that you could kind of look into, or maybe there are other platforms and things that you should try out. Test it in small amounts with different personas and ad types. For example, if your organization wants to hire a senior marketing manager, it's probably not going to be worth your time or all of the cost and all of the approvals that it takes to get that cost to post it on Facebook. Maybe that's not where your ideal candidate will find it. So don't be afraid to ask for this kind of information from job boards. They should be able to provide you with case studies, demographics, and other data to help you determine if theirs is a board that might attract the people you want to reach. If not, don't waste your time and budget. And there's a lot of times where people will, I'll talk with a lot of account executives and make sure that they're giving me solid numbers, case studies, and talking about those demographics. Very, very helpful there. So make sure you're just being choosy. And then start with channels where you're already strong. For instance, don't start an Instagram account if most of your prospective candidates are going to be on LinkedIn somewhere for that particular position or position type. And I'm going to let Chad take it from here on this next level.
Thanks, JD. So let's move to kind of the walk level when it comes to recruitment marketing, and what are we doing to maintain our contact? All right. So you want to create enough content to where you are funneling the right information through the right channels in the right formats. All right. So create evergreen campaigns that you are continually sending out content to that audience. We all have roles and teams within our companies that we're responsible for that, you just continue to recruit for almost year-round, whether it's a high turnover team or just a fast-growing team. It's just an evergreen role that maybe it's a really difficult role, right? So create content that you can continually send out to these talent pools, where you can also create a good mix of job functionality as well as company information. So it's a mix of both of these things are going to keep your audience and your job seekers engaged in what you're sending. So it's not so canned, it's not so repetitive, it's not the same content over and over, because you want to be able to make sure that you really keep that interest of those who are opting in, right? And pay attention to those trends. Speaking of opting in, use benchmark data, create baseline so that you have a starting point. Maybe you're measuring your conversion rate. Maybe you're measuring your opt-in. Maybe you're creating links within the campaigns that you're sending out, and you want to track the trends of who's opening what content, and use that to your advantage to really determine what's working, what's not, what's being most effective, so that going forward you can now say, okay, this has worked in the past, this hasn't, so let's put our focus here. Let's create additional content that kind of mirrors this as we scale and as we move from team to team, role to role. What's worked, what hasn't. And so, one example that we wanted to kind of share with you really quickly from a Jobvite customer is, we obviously offer an Engage product here, which is solely based on that recruitment marketing piece. And find a target audience. Let's find individuals that have a skill set, a profile that's very relevant to a role we're trying to fill. Let's create that content. Let's create messaging. Let's track how many people we're sending it to, how many people have opened that email, how many people have opted out through the unsubscribe option, what is the conversion rate of those people actually joining our talent network and then actually applying. And so just wanted to provide you with some baselines that you can utilize as you start to scale, grow this out, take it to the next level. I also have a slide here of just kind of breaking that out. So campaigns to really target the things that are important to the individuals you're trying to reach. What are some cool things that are happening within your company? Have you received some accolades or some awards? Something that's really going to be eye-opening as you want to get individuals to join that network. Creating a link within those email campaigns to send them to a landing page so you can collect more information. It's really easy to fill out name, email, right? You don't have to make everything required. Make it simple, make it easy. And now you've just captured a whole new audience that wants to opt in, wants to hear more about your company and about what you're doing, and clearly they're engaged. It allows you to be more proactive and at the top of that funnel really create a very wide audience so that whether it's 6 months, a year, 18 months, you've got these individuals who have taken it upon themselves to opt in because of the cool content that you're sending them. So sending follow-up emails to keep that talent engaged. And this is where you want to get creative, and especially those who have opted into your talent network, you want to think outside the box. You don't want to continually send them the same links and send them to the same company page. Get creative there. Ask them to click on links that are something new every time, so that they stay engaged and even maybe share out to their networks how much fun they're having with the email campaigns and the content that you're actually sending them. And I think that takes us to back to JD.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is actually something that I wanted to stop real quick and address everyone here and say, I know some of these things can be daunting. If you don't have an apparatus yet, that's why we're doing this webinar, so that way you can kind of plan this out and get to that point. This is some very cool and slick advertising that Jobvite is doing and that the clients are doing. It's awesome. But you can get there. That's the whole point that we're trying to paint for you, is do some of the things right now, maybe plan it for Q3 of next year to launch something else. It's all about choosing to do the right things right now. Now, if you've already done this type of advertising and gotten a little bit more specific there, the last thing that we wanted to address is being very specific on your reporting and effectiveness of these kinds of campaigns. So with this, if you're in level 3, you need to get very specific with your source report conversions, really. You look at all of your different sources. Which ones are converting? What's your applicant to hire ratio? What are all the ratios in between there? You really want to understand what's resonating over time so that way you can continually improve. And I talk to our recruiting team, and there's this little adage that we have where we say, try it, track it, tweak it. It's just that simple. You don't need to do everything all at once. You just need to really get into the details. This is not something that you would do necessarily in level 1, though. That can sometimes be a distraction from a generally effective and free social media campaign or something like that, right? But really, when you're at this level, you should be going into the nitty-gritty to understand how these things are converting, and also your funnel report conversions. There's reporting in both Jobvite and Bamboo systems and other systems out there that can talk about the interview ratio conversions. So how many people are coming in to interview from these sources? But these are usually the people that don't stick around for a longer process. Maybe that's a process thing we need to change, or maybe it's the actual source of our candidates. Measure your end-to-end process really is the focus on this to get really specific with your data and your metrics.
Thanks, JD. And yeah, you brought up a good point. To get to the run phase of recruitment marketing, to get to this level 3, it takes time. So for those of you out there who are like, this is way beyond the scale that we accomplish, think long term. Like, this isn't going to happen tomorrow or next week or even Q1 2019. Like, this is thinking, where do I want to get to, and how can I get there, and what are some takeaways from our talk track today to help kind of set that up for success, right? So to elaborate a little bit more on get specific, get out there and visit people in person. If you think about what we've done for level 1 and level 2, creating all this content and sending out messaging and keeping it general for evergreen and getting specific and getting people to the top of the funnel and they're in your talent network, all of that takes time, right? And the takeaway here is all of that is electronic. All of that is messaging through a computer and through your mobile device. And, they can see that it's probably coming from a human, but not saying that you're going to be able to meet everyone who opts into your network. But if you can get out and find user groups, find meetups, take opportunities to attend events where you might be able to get up and speak about opportunities, about your company. This is really taking it to the next level. What I've done in the past is, going all the way back to a slide we had previously of getting to know your teams. Find out who regularly goes and joins user groups locally, and just go and hang out. You don't have to use it as a selling point. You don't have to stand up and raise your hand and say, I'm a recruiter and I'd love for you to come work for me. Just getting to know your audience a little bit more, networking, getting out there and actually researching and finding individuals who have that background, have that skill set. You're going to run into a few who know about you, know about the company, maybe have opted into your talent network, and you've been kind of engaging with that person for several weeks. And getting out there and actually putting a face to that name is really going to excel and take it to the next level.
Awesome. So let's then, thanks again, Chad, and let's jump into applications and sourcing and some of the little things that you can do now for level 1 in this part of the process. Now, why would we talk about applications and sourcing? Well, you're probably already doing some level of this or quite a lot of this, right? That's applications. That's kind of the name of the game. But one of the things that we wanted to address right at the beginning here is this idea and absolute need to remove obstacles. Something that is all too common, actually. So let's jump into that. Many recruiters actually have, and HR pros have, applications they've never applied to themselves. I hope you have taken some time to walk in the candidate's shoes or ask a friend to do the same. Hey, I wanted to see if you could choose any job. It doesn't even matter if you're qualified, but just apply to it and tell me your feedback from that. Ask a manager to do the same sometimes. This might be something that really gives some good insights as to the ease of application process that you should have. The idea is that you want to be able to report back and understand, okay, the user experience, i.e. the candidate experience, is something that is really rough, or it's a lot more daunting, or even if it's not terribly daunting and full of a lot of redundancy, sometimes it's just easier to fill out applications at the 4 neighboring companies right around you. So I hope you audit that, you take a look at it, and that's the first thing. no matter where you're at right now, go ahead and audit your application and sourcing pieces. Make sure that application is as simple as possible. So in a case study from that 2017 Talent Board Candidate Experience Report, one recruiting professional from CH2M explained, quote, "We've simplified our application process, eliminating 2 full pages of application data that previous candidates had to fill out. Also, we've added content right before candidates begin their application. For example, immediately after candidates click Apply, we've added a page that tells candidates how long the application process should take, what pieces of information they'll need, and how they'll best complete the application. This serves as a bit of a self-selection point in which some candidates may opt out entirely based on knowing more about our full process, while others may return later to complete their application." Such a cool idea, such a great thing that they do there in order to either get engagement or give self-selectors, allowing people to just self-select out, which otherwise would have been a time drain later on. So there's some very cool things that you can do in your application process, in your early communications. There are automated emails with applicant tracking systems. You can look into that, and I hope you're adding very cool content to that to keep engagement up and just making it a lot more simple for the candidate. There's a lot of places they could apply. You want it to be yours. Okay, so let's take a look at a little bit of the numbers for that. Shorter applications not only have a higher click rate, higher click to apply rate, they also cost you less too. These reports from AppCast show that shortening your average time to hire or average time to apply may increase your applicant flow by 300%. Think about the jobs that you have open right now. Would you like 3 times more candidates? Maybe you should take a look at your application process that over time it has gotten a little bit too bureaucratic, maybe a little bit too much red tape, a little bit too much in redundancy there. So go ahead and audit that. And that's what I would say for that first level. I'm going to let Chad take it from here.
Thanks, JD. So some great points there. And if you want to really kind of take that to the next level, how can you get yourself there, right? Maybe you're already there and you don't realize it. So to really narrow that pool, focus on some high-touch sourcing on key departments, key teams, some of those evergreen positions, as we kind of talked about earlier, rather than taking the kind of what you might call the spray and pray approach to your talent pool. Really focus on what is important, what's an urgency, what are roles that you know are going to need to be filled more frequently, or just a higher sense of urgency because of a specific need that you currently have. But also find the balance. You want your messaging to be personable, but you also want to make sure that you include high number of touches for candidates, right? So going back to kind of setting a benchmark and always having a baseline, try sending out 3 very personalized messages and maybe 2 kind of more general messages versus 5, what you feel are perfectly crafted, contented emails, right? And track those results. Are the 3 personalized emails that you've been sending out and that you're creating netting a higher return and a better click-through rate and more ops into your talent network? Or are the ones that are more kind of a little bit more buzz because you're creating a little sense of excitement, right? And one thing that I have found that has worked for me over the years is, when I reach out to individuals, I don't want to personalize every email so much that I'm spending way too much time crafting those emails, but I also don't want to send out a generic email to a ton of job seekers or potential prospects, because then that's just going to become redundant. It's going to be boring. They're not going to feel the love and attention that they deserve because they're obviously someone who's qualified for the role. So I'll keep my communications pretty short and sweet, and really hoping to pique the interest of the individual receiving that so that they want to hear more. They're like, Chad made this sound interesting. It's personable to me because he called out maybe a skill set I have, the company I work for, the work I've been doing. So he obviously took the time to review my profile, but doesn't leave me a lot of content around the specific role. So, creating a little bit of mystery almost gets the attention of those individuals. So you don't need to fully customize everything you do, but you do want to make it a little bit more personable so that they feel like it's directed to them and not to a greater audience. You also want to make sure that you have discipline to really cut down your list. Sometimes we have so many requisitions that we're working that some roles just inherently get a lot of applicants and net a lot of return. So you want to make sure that you have the discipline to be able to cut down on job postings. If you do have enough candidates, give yourself some time to review those. Maybe there's individuals that have taken the time to apply, and you don't need to advertise that role very much. You can also start sourcing before you post. Clearly, we're all doing some sort of a strategy session with our hiring managers, getting to know the role, whether that's a role that you've worked on before or a new one. You kind of have those conversations. You have some content. Maybe you're still working on the job description, the approval to get it out there. So while all those things are working in conjunction, get out there and start searching, start sourcing. Find some candidates that kind of fit the bill that you know the hiring manager is looking for. That way, when you do kind of bring it full circle and you're ready to put that final stamp on the job description, you can bring those, maybe your top 5, top 10 candidates that you have found, see if you're on the right page. So just taking that kind of proactive approach is really going to really help to narrow the pool, create more personalized content, but not requiring a ton of your time to make sure that we're focusing on the right emails and the right messaging.
Awesome. Yeah, and right along with that, this aspect of or this piece of scaling your team, this next level is really has to do with specializing your efforts and scaling your team. And the things that Chad just talked about is something that we do over here at Bamboo HR because we have time to do so. We have enough headcount to do so. We really have focused our time on making sure we have great talent pools before we ever actually post or launch a position. So glad that Chad talked about that because it's part of kind of a go-to-market strategy to us for most of our positions. It's just something that we're able to do now, and it helps things go a lot smoother. Postings stay open for shorter periods of time, and it lessens our overall workload and the workload for the hiring managers. So this is what I wanted to jump into now, this idea of specializing your efforts really has to do with asking for headcount sometimes. And I know that's something that makes a lot of people in our industry very trepidatious. Everyone gets pretty nervous about, but I always get rejected for that, or like, at what point? And I feel like often we are using the wrong measurements to justify scaling a team. I think we should take a lot from our marketing and sales friends within companies in that there are a lot of different metrics we can use to really look at workloads and adding headcount to the team and adding more value to that. So as you scale out, increasing headcount on your recruiting team can mean that you can prioritize, specialize more, can have greater communications like Chad was talking about, and you're able to specialize more in understanding these candidate personas and candidate types. For instance, one of our talent acquisition partners over here at Bamboo HR recently did a sales enablement certification of her own accord because she wanted to really understand what it was like to go through that and understand the things that they test for that. Just her understanding that better allows her to screen, to do some sales and marketing for the position as well, and just have better quality experience and quality hires for that team. So she's able to specialize because she has time to do so. We at Bamboo HR have less requisitions because we have a larger umbrella of influence in what we handle. We do everything from workforce planning until 2-month check-in after onboarding. But because of this, we're able to have something that's still very scalable, and we can really have all of the pieces that we're talking about today, employer branding and recruitment marketing, these things that each individual recruiter can do because they don't have maybe 40 requisitions, which may sound too familiar to many of you out there. So that's one of the things that I hope most of us are looking at, trying out, changing to, is specializing to specific teams or departments and scaling our team sooner. Don't be afraid to ask for that headcount. Don't be afraid to use the right numbers to show, hey, our workload only gets us to a triage point and only gets us to a point of putting out fires. It doesn't get us to win in the local job market. All right. So now that you've been doing that, and you're jumping into scaling your team, you're jumping into scaling or improving your application and sourcing pieces. We're going to jump right into screening and interviews and what you should be looking at right now. Number one, use what you have. A lot of times we tend to complicate this, but really it's about focusing on what you have and improving what you have. So when you're doing these screening and interview pieces, you should be setting clear expectations for candidates. According to that same 2017 Talent Board Candidate Experience Report, candidate who rated their hiring experience as a 1 star out of 5, 46% withdrew their applications due to disrespect of time during interviews. In contrast, among candidates who gave their experience a great or 5-star rating, only 1.4% left due to disrespect of time. So set clear objectives for hiring committees and help these hiring committees know and understand that time is of the essence, i.e. respect of a candidate's time. Getting back to them quickly, or if you know you can't get back to them quickly, just let them know you're going to take your time on it. Most of the time people understand that if you're just able to communicate that. One of the things that you should be doing is auditing your hiring experience. So I will go ahead and just jump into this idea real fast. I don't know if we have enough time to really get into greater detail with this, but I did an exercise with our talent acquisition team, and it was where we look at a template of a job description, and I took out the name of the job, and I asked them to read it out loud, and it sounded suspiciously like what we do at Bamboo HR. And I had them guess what that position might be, and it was just a template I found on Indeed there, a very generic job description, and the title for that job was process engineer. This is something that I hope you start thinking about doing, no matter what level you're at, really making sure you're going to hiring managers and saying, hey, if we had this many interviews, or if we cut down the amount of people involved in the interview process, we could bring people in a little bit faster, and I predict or project you could probably save 12 hours of your work life. How do you feel about that, right? Those are the kinds of things I think we need to look at doing, is just in order to scale what we have, is first go back and simplify and make sure we've kind of process engineered our hiring and screening process and apparatus. Keep it short, keep it simple, and make sure when you're jumping into that, you're able to use some of the data to sell that point to your hiring managers. Create this small but strong interview team who agree on what they're interviewing for, both as a whole and individually. So this is a really cool graph here. Google's people analytics team found out that 4 interviews were enough to predict whether someone should be hired at Google with 86% confidence. After the 4th interviewer, the increase in accuracy dropped off dramatically. With each additional interview, the accuracy of the mean interview score, or that score's ability to predict a hire or no hire decision, increased less than 1%. So go ahead and show this to them. Go ahead and show them a few other stats, but help them see that more is not always better. We just need to have a clean, good process for hiring. And I'll let Chad jump in from there.
Awesome. Thank you, JD. In light of time, I'm going to try and speed things up so that we have some time at the end for questions. So I'm going to get through my content here, but probably not time talking about some of this stuff so that we can make sure that we address questions. So when we talk about level 2 and providing guidance, the biggest takeaway that I have here for you guys is creating some sort of a competency guide. This doesn't have to require a lot of your time. You have job descriptions and you have interaction with your hiring managers. So just between those two things, you should easily be able to list out, 10 to 15 bullet points of what's important and what is going to make someone successful in this role, and creating some questions and what are some things that are must-haves or that we can look for that are going to make an individual thrive in this role. And so I highly encourage that, as you get to that level 2 and you're starting to walk and getting into that run, working with your hiring managers to create some sort of a competency guide that will allow you to assess every candidate apples to apples, because at the end of the day, that's what we need to do to kind of eliminate bias and keep everything on track, right? As well as interview evaluations. A lot of applicant tracking systems these days, you can create specific evaluation forms tailored to that role. So it doesn't have to be generic and general. You can derive an evaluation that is specific to sales, specific to engineering, specific to customer success, so that when the interview team goes in and fill those out, they now have the exact topic of what's important to that team and that hiring manager in the success and growth of that individual that's going to be joining that team. One other thing that I definitely wanted to mention is making sure that you are utilizing things that have been consistent throughout the process once you do get to this point. Candidates still want to hear some consistency. They want to make sure that they have insight into the product, into what is your specific role in the marketplace. Are you an industry leader? So some things that you are consistently sharing throughout the entire process to get your candidate to this point. Make sure that consistency stays and remains, so that they have that confidence, have that trust in the company as they look to possibly join. So with that, I could talk more, but I'm gonna throw it back to JD for the next slide.
Awesome. I'm also going to try to speak with brevity, which is something that's pretty difficult for me sometimes. So one of the things that I guess the big takeaway of this piece of being at level 3, or you're at a point where these other things are working well enough, is focusing on refining your process and continuous internal education. Very often we're not spending enough time, and the time that we need to educate our hiring managers on what works, what are the best practices, what are the best. I just got out of a meeting an hour ago with somebody on our business analytics team, and talked to him about good interview ratios. Continually educating hiring managers and other leadership that's part of the process is going to help you continue to refine your process. They'll understand the what and the why. Make sure you're documenting your process and the what and the why as well. And you'll continue to find more ways to clean that process and keep experiences positive. So that's the main takeaway, is continuous internal education. One of the things that we do at Bamboo is when a leader comes on, then we do leadership onboarding essentially. We do interview training as part of that. One of the directors we recently hired said, I implicitly trust you guys as subject matter experts because of the hiring experience that I had. So it's just going to continue to get better from there, and that's the big takeaway I have from that. All right. I guess there's nothing earth-shattering there from that one, but hope you continue to build on there. And we're going to let Chad jump in to offer letter and pre-onboarding.
Yeah, thanks, JD. Yeah, this is the last kind of outline step that we have for our webinar today, is just once you have done all of this work leading up to wanting to extend an offer and get your new hire on board, this is where the fun kicks in, because it feels like all of your work finally came to fruition. So I'm going to throw back to JD to kind of talk about offer letter and onboarding.
Okay. So as far as this idea of creating excitement, this is one of the things that, again, we'll kind of breeze through in interest of time here. But some of the things, let me give you some of the things that we do at Bamboo HR that maybe you can take right now no matter what level you're at, because we started doing this a little while ago. If you're providing a great candidate experience, then this offer letter phase is easier. It's a much easier thing to go through because they already have some excitement there. You're not going back and forth and playing a poker game on negotiations. It just seems intuitive at that point if you're building good relationships throughout the hiring process and they have a great experience. Make everything as efficient as you can, meaning getting all of the offer letter pieces, an automated offer letter, and finding the right tools to have a good, clean offer letter phase. I think the biggest stumble that companies often have is that they create too bulky of an offer letter phase, or it becomes very daunting, or maybe there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in it. Clean that up. It should be about the excitement of their job. And yes, there are some things, some check marks that you need to make sure are in place, legal things, absolutely, but do everything you can to simplify, to create excitement. provide confidence in creating that excitement about joining your organization. One of the things that we do is we'll make team introductions during our office tours. We'll answer questions about the job when they first come in for an interview. And how that helps later on with the offer, they already know. You've resolved concerns before the concerns are even there. So they've already painted a picture of themselves in that role. And with that, I'll just, to speed things along, I think that's some of the biggest things that you can do with candidates is if you're creating excitement and engagement now, the offer letter and onboarding phases are going to be a lot simpler as long as you make sure to automate those and make sure they're not filled with a lot of extras. So, Chad?
Perfect. So amplify your efforts. You've put in all of this hard work. You've put in all of this legwork to get to this point. So do what you can to keep that candidate engaged, right? There might be several weeks between an offer sign and their actual start date. So keeping constant communication with that candidate. Don't just say, oh, wipe my hands clean. I got them an offer. They signed it. On to the next. Like, still give that new hire some TLC, that you've worked so hard to get them to this point. Don't just, let them somehow slip through the cracks because we neglected to keep in communication with them. Have self-onboarding. So many systems these days, that's going to really kind of take it to the next level in regards to the experience that they're able to obtain now that they're about to join your organization. They're going to feel included. They're going to feel wanted. It's something as little as creating, their own profile within some of the systems that you use. Like they're starting to feel like a part of your organization, and that's so crucial between their offer and their actual start date. And it's really just going to honestly help speed up some of the things that you need to do from an HR perspective for all your new hires. So going to throw it back to JD one last time for the final level.
All right, and this is something that together we can just kind of bounce back and forth on. Again, thanks for being with us, everyone. Just wanted to make sure we jump into this last piece. Start ensuring these managers are invested and understand the role in this phase. What are some things that managers understand their role in this phase? What are some things that managers can do to be involved beyond interviewing? Well, they can invite a new hire or somebody they're giving an offer letter to, invite them to a lunch with team members to get them to know the team a little bit better. Something that we do is we often send pictures. There's a copywriter on our team. Feel free to look him up to verify my wild claims. Rob DeLuca, our lead copywriter over here, he actually, one of the first instances where we just used pictures of the teams, that they were so excited to have him join the team even before he signed the offer that they sent a great picture over to him. And it brings a lot when you're forging and forging connections and building relationships. You're also answering questions before people even start. And those questions are, what is this really going to be like? Am I going to be included and involved? Am I going to like this job? You're already resolving those concerns beforehand and just getting a very smooth offer letter and onboarding phase. So involve the managers, educate them. We have an internal wiki over here that we've built out to give these ideas to managers, and we want to continually educate them on it. All right, we're going to jump right into metrics here and let Chad jump into those top funnel pieces.
Thanks, JD. Yes. So real quickly, track some of the things that are right there at the top of the funnel. More specifically, how much time are they spending on the career site? What are the application rates? Are candidates getting enough information and being engaged to apply to your requisitions? So, when we start breaking this down, start at the top because that's obviously where kind of the first line defense, if you will, begins to build out these candidate pools. So what are we doing right out the gate? How can we improve? What are the benchmarks? And really make sure that you're tracking positive and negative so you have that A-B comparison so you know what can work going forward.
Awesome. For this, again, for interest of time, we're coming close to the top of the hour. We will send out these slides here, but the main thing I will say about this is that do not neglect your drop-off rates, your candidate withdrawal rates, your voluntary turnover, and examining those metrics, as well as your new hire turnover. If anybody leaves in the first 90 days, you really need to look at feedback from the exit interviews and go back and change something in your hiring and marketing efforts early on when you're trying to find the right people for your teams, and factor in that cost per hire conversion. Again, hope we can answer some written Q&As later on this if there are some more on this, but want to just move it right along and back over to Chad.
Yep. Really quickly, I'm on the wrong slide. For candidate engagement metrics, I love NPS, Net Promoter Score. I love being able to get candidate feedback in their surveys. Every company's different on how frequently you send out a survey, whether you do it right after a recruiter screen, if they get to the hiring manager, if you wait until the on-site interview, but really utilizing that data to identify gaps, to increase the candidate engagement and improve the candidate process and their experience, right? So make sure that you do some sort of metric so that you are gauging what the candidates are experiencing, and also the interview teams. Like, it's very important to make sure that you are surveying individuals on your specific teams. Maybe they feel that there's some redundancies or need to focus more on deciding who should focus on specific aspects of the candidate's background. So just having some sort of a scorecard so that you know from your hiring team and from your candidate what's working well, what's not, so that we can improve and then continue to expand on the things that we're doing proactively and positively. So real quickly, I know we're past time, but just some takeaways. Candidate engagement can happen at every level. It doesn't matter what size you are, how much money and resources you have to invest, what your budget is. Analyze your current efforts so that you can map where you want to be. Metrics and creating baselines are so important. Identify next level in each area, whether it's the employee branding, the recruitment marketing, application and sourcing, screening and interviewing, or what the offer letter and pre-onboarding phase. Like, make sure that you are able to identify where you stand and what you can do to get yourself to that next level, and then measure the impact of your efforts. To be able to have data that says, this is working, this isn't. We've put a lot of time and effort into focusing on the employer branding, and here are the fruits of our labor, so that now you can move on to the recruitment marketing and so on and so forth. So just make sure that you do have something in place that you're able to track your efforts, because it definitely takes your time, and want to make sure that we're creating a great engagement and great experience overall. JD, anything to add to that?
Nothing big, just a very big thank you to everyone who is attending here. But this main message that you brought up, this idea that you can do things right now, and the little things matter right now that you can build from. So grateful that you address that, and you address that in metrics and all the pieces for that. So yeah, I think that's about it for today for me. Thanks.
Awesome. Yes, thank you, everyone. I'm going to throw it back to Claire. I don't know if we have time for Q&A, but definitely want to address that now.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. This is Claire. So we are 4 minutes over our scheduled time. So what I'm going to do is actually frog in my throat. We did have some fantastic questions, and if you have any for Chad and JD to answer, please add them into the Q&A box right now. What I'm going to do is leave this webinar on just for a little bit longer so that you have time to type them in, and then I'm going to collect them and have Chad and JD answer them afterwards, and we'll either add them into our follow-up email, maybe put it in a blog post. And another thing is that Chad and JD are on LinkedIn. Who'd have thought? So what I think they would both be happy to do is for you to reach out to them, to connect with them, to get to know them, and to send them your questions, because as I'm sure you could tell, these are both incredibly intelligent and helpful guys that we have here. So feel free to do any and all of those options, but I am going to let you guys go for the rest of your day. You can see up here on the screen that we've got a couple of different offers from Bamboo HR and Jobvite respectively. You're going to get more information about them in our follow-up email, but you can read them on the screen right now too. So thank you very much to everyone who was able to join us this afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you very much to Chad and to JD and the Bamboo HR team, who I know did an incredible amount of work on these slides and everything in the background. So thanks everyone. Have a great